before there's an opportunity to hoodwink the American taxpayers, and we're all that.
This is a combo question.
Oh boy.
How does your small business plan differ from what Congress passed this year?
Well, first of all, as a small businessman and perhaps a medium-sized businessman, we've got to get the government out of our business. You have to sign more documents today to buy a car than you do to go over to Afghanistan and volunteer to serve on the front lines. My plan for small business is to cut the payroll tax, cut other taxes so that you create capital. Right now, small businesses cannot borrow money. I think you're probably all aware of that. So where do they turn? Why isn't small business hiring more people? Because they're overtaxed, ladies and gentlemen. Now, 70% of the people employed in the United States of America today, outside of government, 70% of them work for small businesses. Now, if we know that's where the jobs are, why don't we create an opportunity for these small business entrepreneurs to flourish and to develop? If they can't borrow the capital, if we cut taxes, they can develop their own capital through profits. Are you also aware of some of the additional requirements? Only because it's a small business question will I digress back to the healthcare. But when you see the full implementation of that on small businesses, you're going to be horrified. And I always like to use the example of, and this is just a made-up company, Mary Ann's Beauty Salon, and she has 8 operators. Starting in another year or two, she's going to have to provide health care to each one of those 8 operators. My best guess is that costs about, if she really does a good job shopping for it, it's going to cost about $500 per employee per month. If you extrapolate that number, that's $50,000 a year for a small hair salon with 8 operators. I would venture to say that that's probably exactly what she made for the year or close to it. So what is Mary Ann faced with? She's faced with 2 decisions. One, close up and go out of business. But she's not going to do that because she's an entrepreneur. But she's going to have to cut back. So instead of creating jobs with these various programs, we're doing the opposite. My guess is that this hypothetical Mary Ann has to lay off about 4 beauty shop operators. I think they're called operators or technicians. She's going to have to lay off 4 of them so that she can have enough money to take care of the 4 that are left. And I think she's going to have to step back up and go back to work on the line just to be able to find a way to make a little bit of money. That's not the way to do it. Currently, jobs and employment in our country, I don't know if anyone's aware of this statistic. 40% of all the people employed today in the United States work for government in one form or another. 40%. Now, we've just recently, we're still in a very deep recession. And I can tell you as a businessman, and I presume every other business person in this room, has cut back, contracted during this downturn. However, the federal government has continued to expand. Ladies and gentlemen, as a country, we cannot support 40% of our citizens working for government. I mean, there's an end to that program, and it's coming quickly, and it could be devastating. We have to find better jobs, and we have to adjust the pay. Are you aware now that federal employees make far more than anyone in private industry? You know, it used to be if you took a federal job, you got paid less, but you had security. Now we have an individual type of occupations, the federal government pays more than business pays. So now business people are forced to compete with the federal government for employees, and the federal government will pay them a lot more money. Think that one over tonight.
In the summer of 2009, you were on record saying cash for Congress was a good idea. You now say it was not. fell under the program?
Okay. Boy, if there's anyone that can answer this question better than I'd welcome them. I was interviewed near the end of August. As you remember, Cash for Clunkers was primarily an August program. Someone interviewed me then and said, "How is business with Cash for Clunkers?" I said, "It's very good. We're selling a tremendous amount of cars." They said, "Wow, so we can quote you to say that Cash for Clunkers has stimulated business." I said, "Yes, you can." Now, here's exactly what happened. Everyone that was thinking about buying a car in September and October and November and December and January all came forward because the government was offering $3,500 to $4,500. They all came forward and bought in August. So you had this tremendous spike in business. But the true test was that I was interviewed again in January, and they said, "How was the year?" The year was terrible. We sold 22% less cars in '09 with Cash for Clunkers than we did in '08. And the numbers are burned into my memory. In calendar year '08, we, the industry, nationwide, sold 13.1 million cars. Cash for Clunkers in '09, we just hit 10 million cars for the whole year. So when you have an opportunity to evaluate a program long-term, and what's its sustainability is, it was a failure. It was a classic failure because we sold so many less cars. Now let me tell you what else we did. Nobody ever thinks of this. No one thought to talk to anyone in the auto industry. Every car that we took in on trade, we had to destroy immediately. Now, certainly there were clunkers that came in, but there were also a lot of nice cars. I'd like to use the example of the 1986 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme that came into one of my stores with 40,000 miles. It was pristine, and we destroyed it. Now let me tell you how that affected people that our president tries to help the most. The lowest income people, the lower income people on the ladder, had no opportunity to buy cars that they could afford. We took them all off the market and we destroyed them. So now someone that's making small salary and normally pays $5,000 or $6,000 for a car, there aren't any. There weren't any. So what happened is, in the free enterprise system, supply and demand kicked in. So now a car that should have sold for $4,000 or $5,000 was selling for $7,000 and $8,000, and people couldn't afford it that would normally buy those. I bet none of you ever thought of that. We took all the cars away from the lower income people. That certainly could not have been the plan, but that was a reality. But if someone would have asked ahead of time, could have easily told them the answer to that. So Cash for Clunkers definitely failed. On the same side, ladies and gentlemen, the government was paying $4,500 or $3,500 a car. They could have got the same job done with $1,500, but they didn't ask. You know, they didn't ask experienced automobile people. They just knew the answer. Well, what they knew or thought they knew was wrong.
Yeah, a couple questions on this point. Why have you refused to debate Betty Sutton at the Akron Press Club and the Cleveland City Club?
Okay, I have agreed. I debated Betty Sutton last week in Lorain County, and I'm scheduled to debate her tonight on WTAM radio. I turned down a couple of other opportunities because the playing field wasn't fair, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to have a debate anytime, anywhere, as long as the playing field is level and even. I don't think there's a single person out here that would go into an area that they knew they weren't welcome and would be severely attacked. I can tell you, as never being in politics before, I have been severely attacked with lies. Severely attacked. I'm not near the gorilla that they try to portray. Do you think for 1 minute that I'd be in business for 42 and a half years if I did even a portion of what they're trying to say on television. Now, I want to point something out to you. My opponent, I like to not use her name, but I think you know who she is. My opponent has had 7 or 8 outside groups come in on her behalf and run commercials. You have to look at them at the end. If it doesn't say I'm Betty Sutton and I approve this message, that means it was run by an outside organization. I wouldn't allow any outside organizations to come in and run an ad for me because I don't want to be in the pocket of anyone. Do you think for a minute these 7 organizations are just spending, they're spending $1.5 million a week, between $500,000 and $1 million on each one of these outside causes. Do you think for 1 second they're doing that just to be nice? In my opinion, they know that they have my opponent in their back pocket or they wouldn't do it. Doesn't make any sense to me otherwise. But I wouldn't allow that to happen. I've used mostly my own money because I don't want to be obligated to anyone. I'm a businessman who's never been obligated to someone, and I want to be able to go to Washington as a free thinker and without having people knock on a door and say, hey, Ganley, you owe us. You owe us.